The docking bay of the prestigious Galaxis Interstellar Academy buzzed with activity. Ships of every shape, size, and design unloaded passengers, equipment, and supplies as alien students of dozens of species moved in synchronized chaos. Overhead, the voice of the station's AI announced class schedules, dormitory assignments, and reminders about proper docking protocol in 300 languages. Standing in the middle of the bustling crowd, one figure drew more than a few sideways glances and outright stares. Jax Mason adjusted the strap of his duffel bag, his gaze sweeping across the bustling station. His boots clinked softly against the metal flooring as he stepped forward, the rhythmic sound drowned out by the hum of alien voices. He wasn't overly tall by human standards, but here among his new peers he towered. To the left, a group of soft-bodied Velorith craned their elongated necks, their iridescent blue skin shimmering under the station's lights. To the right, a Kragnathian trio chittered among themselves, their segmented exoskeletons clicking with alarm. Jax couldn't help but smirk as their gazes darted to him and then quickly away. He was used to it by now. Humans always drew attention. Earth wasn't called a death world for nothing. Its gravity was intense by galactic standards, its ecosystems were a mess of predation and competition, and its atmosphere was a cocktail of gases that many species considered barely breathable. Humans, by extension, were seen as bizarre anomalies, creatures forged in a crucible of danger and chaos. Is that the human? The whispered question came from a group of Zalarians nearby, their bioluminescent spots pulsing with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Jax pretended not to hear, but the faint twitch of amusement tugged at his lips. He wasn't offended. If anything, their reaction was par for the course. As Jax made his way to his assigned dormitory, he replayed the conversation that had led to this moment in his mind. "You've been accepted into the Galaxis Interstellar Academy," the recruiter had told him, their voice barely hiding their surprise. "You'll be the first human to attend. This is unprecedented." "Yeah, I get that a lot," Jax had replied with a grin, leaning back in his chair. "What can I say? We humans like to keep things interesting." "You do realize what this means, don't you?" the recruiter pressed. "This isn't just about you. You'll be representing your entire species. The Academy is the heart of galactic diplomacy and knowledge. It's not just a school, it's a proving ground. Are you prepared for that level of scrutiny?" Jax had shrugged, though the weight of the moment hadn't been lost on him. "I'll handle it. Besides, I've never been one to back down from a challenge." His dorm room was surprisingly spacious, with a zero-gravity sleeping pod, an adjustable climate control system, and a multi-species nutrient synthesizer. Jax tossed his duffel bag onto the floor and collapsed onto the provided chair, which adjusted automatically to his frame. Before he could fully relax, the door chimed and a holographic screen lit up with a notification. "Visitor," the AI announced. Jax raised an eyebrow. He hadn't been there 10 minutes and already someone wanted to see him? "Let him in," he said. The door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a figure who was, for lack of a better word, imposing. The alien was tall and covered in overlapping scales that shimmered like polished stone. Its 4 arms were folded across its chest, and its golden eyes narrowed as they took in Jax's relaxed posture. "You are the human," the alien said, its voice a low rumble. Jax nodded, leaning back in his chair. "Guilty as charged. And you are?" "I am Shilnak of the Drevas," it replied, stepping into the room. "I am your dormitory liaison. It is my responsibility to ensure you acclimate to the Academy's protocols and standards." "Nice to meet you, Shilnak," Jax said, extending a hand. "And don't worry, I've read up on the rules. I'll try not to cause too much trouble." Shilnak stared at the offered hand for a moment before reluctantly shaking it. "I will hold you to that, human. The Academy values order and discipline. Disruption will not be tolerated." "Got it," Jax said, his grin widening. "But just so you know, humans are pretty good at adapting. I'll fit in just fine." Shilnak's eyes narrowed further. "We shall see." The first day of classes was an exercise in controlled chaos. Jax quickly realized that the Academy's diversity wasn't just cosmetic. Each species had its own unique way of processing information, communicating, and interacting with the world. In comparative xenobiology, Jax had to navigate a room filled with floating platforms designed for species that couldn't stand on solid ground. In galactic diplomacy, he found himself paired with a Zalarian whose bioluminescent pulses served as its primary means of expression. But the real challenge came during advanced astrophysics. The instructor, a towering Norathian with 6 eyes and a booming voice, called for volunteers to solve a complex equation on the holoboard. "Anyone, the instructor asked, scanning the room. The silence was deafening. Even the most confident students hesitated, their body language betraying their uncertainty. Jax raised his hand. The room turned as one, hundreds of eyes, some glowing, some compound, some entirely alien, fixing on him. Human, the instructor said, its tone both curious and skeptical. You believe you can solve this? Jax stood, his expression calm. I've got a decent grasp of math, he said, making his way to the board. Let's see if I can keep up. As he worked, the room remained silent, save for the soft hum of the hollow board. The equation was challenging, sure, but Jax had faced worse. Earth's education system might not have been as advanced as the academies, but humans had a knack for figuring things out under pressure. When he finished, he stepped back and looked at the instructor. That about right? The Norathian examined the solution, its 6 eyes blinking in unison. Correct, it said after a long pause. A ripple of astonishment passed through the class. Jax returned to his seat, ignoring the stares that followed him. He didn't mind. Let them be stunned. Humanity wasn't just here to survive, it was here to thrive. Section 2 will follow Jax's deeper integration into the academy, the mounting tensions between species, and his first encounter with a challenge that tests not only his skills but his resilience as a Deathworlder. Jax's quiet victory in advanced astrophysics was just the beginning. The news of the human who dared to volunteer, and succeeded, spread through the academy like wildfire. Everywhere Jax went, he could feel the stares and hear the hushed whispers of curiosity, skepticism, and, in some cases, outright hostility. The academy was an institution designed to bring together the brightest minds from across the galaxy, but that didn't mean it was free of prejudice. Deathworlders, with their violent histories and so-called barbaric survival tactics, were considered anomalies, accidents of evolution rather than participants in higher civilization. It didn't take long for Jax to feel the weight of that perception. His first real confrontation came in galactic diplomacy, a class designed to teach the art of negotiation, alliance building, and conflict resolution. The instructor, a graceful Ithalite named Professor Viril, floated in midair, her translucent wings glowing faintly. She gestured toward the holographic display at the front of the room, where the simulated map of a contested star system flickered. For today's exercise, you will form pairs and attempt to negotiate a solution to this territorial dispute, Professor Viril said. Remember, the goal is compromise, not dominance. Jax's heart sank as he realized he hadn't been paired with anyone yet. Most of the students had already gravitated toward familiar species, leaving him standing awkwardly in the middle of the room. Human. The voice came from behind him, low and guttural. Jax turned to see a hulking Brachorian towering over him. The Brachorian's leathery skin was a deep shade of green, and its 4 arms crossed over its chest in a display of confidence, or intimidation. I will pair with you, the Brachorian said. Its name tag identified it as Zarnok. This will be educational. Jax wasn't sure whether to be relieved or wary. Sure thing, Zarnok. Let's give it a shot. The exercise began with a flurry of negotiations. Each pair took on the roles of 2 factions vying for control of the star system's resources. Jax quickly realized that Zarnok's approach to diplomacy was about as subtle as a sledgehammer. We will demand control of the system's central planet, Zarnok said, slamming a fist onto the holographic table. It is the most strategically valuable location. Right? Jax said, trying to keep his tone neutral. But if we go in guns blazing, we're just going to escalate the conflict. What if we offer shared access to the central planet in exchange for control of the outer asteroid belt? It's rich in resources and it would give both sides something to gain. Zarnok's golden eyes narrowed. Humans are known for their aggression. Why do you seek compromise? Jax shrugged. Aggression's a tool, not a strategy. On Earth, we learned pretty quick that collaboration is just as important as competition. Besides, you can't win every fight by swinging harder. You've got to outthink your opponent. Zarnok grunted, clearly unconvinced, but it allowed Jax to take the lead. Together, they presented their proposal to the rest of the class. To Jax's surprise, Professor Viril singled them out for praise. While many of you focus solely on asserting dominance, this team recognized the value of mutual benefit, she said, her wings shimmering. Such thinking is crucial in fostering lasting peace. Zarnok looked mildly disgruntled, but Jax caught the faintest flicker of respect in its gaze. Not all encounters went as smoothly. In xenophysiology, a class that explored the biological adaptations of different species, Jax once again found himself the center of attention. The instructor, a diminutive but sharp-witted Snervan named Dr. Crix, presented a holographic image of a human skeleton. Humans, Dr. Crix began, are among the most biologically resilient species in the known galaxy. Their bodies are designed to endure extreme conditions, from high gravity to fluctuating climates. However, this resilience comes at a cost, namely their high levels of aggression and risk-taking behavior. Jax bristled at the tone. It wasn't the first time he'd heard humans reduced to little more than violent anomalies, but it still rankled. Dr. Crix turned to him, antennae twitching. Cadet Mason, would you care to elaborate on how your species has survived such a hostile environment without self-destructing? The question was pointed, almost mocking, and Jax could feel the eyes of the class on him. He took a deep breath before answering. Survival on Earth wasn't just about fighting, he said evenly. It was about adapting. Sure, we've had our fair share of conflicts, but we've also built alliances, created technologies, and learned from our mistakes. Humanity isn't just about aggression, it's about resilience and innovation. Dr. Crix tilted its head as if considering his words. An interesting perspective. Let us hope it proves accurate in practice. The turning point came during the Academy's annual Interspecies Obstacle Challenge, an event designed to test students' physical and mental capabilities. The challenge was infamous for its difficulty, combining simulated environments with high-stakes problem-solving. Each year, the top-performing team earned not only accolades but also increased credibility within the Academy's social hierarchy. Jax hadn't planned to participate. He figured he'd lay low until he had a better understanding of the Academy's dynamics, but fate had other ideas. Cadet Mason, Shulnock said, cornering him in the dining hall. Your presence is requested on the Terran team. Jax raised an eyebrow. Terran team? You mean I'm not the only human here? You are, Shulnock said, its tone clipped. But the Academy insists on maintaining certain traditions. Each species is required to field a team, even if it consists of a single individual. Jax leaned back in his chair, processing the information. So, let me get this straight, I'm supposed to represent all of humanity in a competition designed to test the best of the best? Precisely, Shulnock said. Jax's grin returned. Sounds like fun. The challenge was grueling to say the least. The first stage took place in a simulated jungle, where participants had to navigate treacherous terrain while avoiding holographic predators. Jax's earth-honed instincts served him well. He moved through the dense foliage with a speed and precision that left his competitors struggling to keep up. The second stage was a logic puzzle, requiring teams to decode an alien language in order to deactivate his bomb. Jax's ability to think under pressure earned him high marks, though he couldn't help but notice the incredulous looks from the other competitors. By the time he reached the final stage, a high-gravity endurance run, Jax was running on pure adrenaline. The course's gravity had been cranked up to levels that left many participants collapsing, but Jax powered through, his earth-hardened muscles giving him a distinct advantage. When he crossed the finish line, the room erupted in stunned silence. Jax looked around, breathing heavily but grinning. Not bad for a Deathworlder, huh? The challenge was over, but the real journey was just beginning. The aftermath of the Interspecies Obstacle Challenge left ripples throughout the Galactic Academy. Jax Mason's name was no longer whispered in skeptical tones. It was spoken with a mix of awe, curiosity, and in some cases jealousy. Deathworlders had long been regarded as unpredictable, dangerous, and crude, but Jax's resilience and ingenuity had forced his peers to confront the narrowness of their assumptions. Jax, however, wasn't basking in the newfound attention. If anything, he was busier than ever, diving headfirst into advanced studies while fielding requests from curious classmates and even a few professors. His success had made him a symbol, whether he wanted to be one or not. A breakthrough in diplomacy. One of the first to approach him after the challenge was Zarnock, the Brachorian with whom he'd butted heads in galactic diplomacy. Human, Zarnock rumbled, finding Jax in the Academy's atrium. You exceeded my expectations during the challenge. I propose collaboration. Jax raised an eyebrow. Collaboration? Didn't think that was your style, Zarnock? The Brachorian's forearms crossed, its golden eyes narrowing. Do not misunderstand. Your methods are unconventional, but they are effective. Together, we could achieve results neither of us could accomplish alone. Jax considered the offer. He had no illusions about Zarnock's motives. The Brachorian wasn't offering friendship, just an alliance of convenience. Still, it was a step forward. All right, Zarnock, Jax said, extending a hand. Let's see what we can do. Their first test came during a mock diplomatic negotiation involving a three-species dispute over mineral rights on an asteroid belt. Zarnok's brashness and Jax's pragmatism proved to be a surprisingly effective combination. While Zarnok asserted their position with characteristic force, Jax navigated the intricacies of compromise, crafting a solution that left all parties moderately satisfied, a rare feat in galactic politics. By the end of the exercise, Professor Virolo praised their teamwork, noting how Jax had tempered Zarnok's aggression without undermining its authority. For the first time, Jax saw something in Zarnok's gaze that looked a lot like respect. The shadow of prejudice. Not everyone was impressed by Jax's success. Among the Academy's elite, there were those who viewed his achievements as a threat to the established order. One such individual was Xerix, a member of the aristocratic Veltran species known for their intellectual superiority and disdain for primitive races. Xerix made no effort to hide its contempt. "Impressive," it said one day in Xenophysiology, its voice dripping with sarcasm. "A Deathworlder who can run and fight. How quaint." Jax didn't rise to the bait, but the Veltran wasn't done. "Tell me, Cadet Mason, do humans even understand the concept of subtlety, or is brute force your only language?" Jax smiled tightly. "Subtlety's not really my strong suit," he said, leaning back in his chair. "But I'd be happy to give you a demonstration if you ever want to spar." The class erupted in laughter, and Xerix's pale face flushed with indignation. Uncovering the Academy's secrets. As Jax's reputation grew, so did his curiosity about the Academy itself. The institution was a marvel of engineering, a sprawling complex that floated in the void of intergalactic space. But beneath its polished exterior, Jax began to sense that there was more to the Academy than met the eye. It started with a chance encounter in the restricted archives. Jax had been searching for information on early human space exploration when he stumbled upon a file marked, classified, Deathworlder Initiatives. The file was encrypted, but even the title was enough to set off alarm bells. Why would the Academy have classified files specifically about Deathworlders? And why was access restricted? Jax's instincts told him to tread carefully, but he couldn't shake the feeling that the file held answers to questions he hadn't even thought to ask. Later that week, he approached Shulnak, the Academy's administrative liaison, who had always seemed strangely invested in his progress. "Shulnak," Jax said, "what's the deal with the restricted archives? I found something about Deathworlders, but it's locked down tighter than a black hole." Shulnak's spines bristled. "That information is not for cadets, Jax Mason. I advise you to focus on your studies and leave such matters alone." Jax narrowed his eyes. "You know something, don't you? Something about why the Academy let a Deathworlder in for the first time?" Shulnak hesitated, its translucent eyes flickering with an emotion Jax couldn't quite place. "The Academy's mission is to prepare the galaxy's brightest minds for leadership," it said carefully. "Your presence here is part of that mission. That is all I can say." It wasn't much of an answer, but it only fueled Jax's determination to dig deeper. The catalyst. The turning point came during an off-world field exercise on the planet Calvoria, a lush world with dense jungles and an unforgiving climate. The exercise was meant to test survival skills, but it quickly turned into something far more dangerous. Jax and his group were navigating a treacherous ravine when the ground gave way beneath them. Most of the cadets managed to grab onto ledges or vines, but one, a young Rilvan named Crix, wasn't so lucky. Crix dangled precariously over a sheer drop, its 6 limbs flailing as it struggled to hold on. The other cadets froze, paralyzed by fear or uncertainty. Jax didn't hesitate. He scrambled down the rocky slope, his fingers gripping the jagged surface as he made his way toward Crix. The gravity on Calvoria was nearly double that of Earth's, but Jax's body, conditioned by his Deathworld origins, handled it with relative ease. "Hold on, Crix," Jax shouted, his voice steady despite the danger. Crix's eyes were wide with terror, but it managed a weak nod. When Jax reached the Rilvan, he wrapped one arm around its trembling body and used the other to anchor himself to the rock face. With a grunt of effort, he began hauling them both back up. By the time they reached solid ground, Jax's muscles were screaming in protest, but he didn't let go until Crix was safely out of harm's way. The other cadets stared in stunned silence. "You saved me," Crix said, its voice trembling. "Of course I did," Jax replied, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. The incident became a defining moment, not just for Jax but for the Academy as a whole. In the days that followed, he found himself approached by cadets who had once kept their distance, their curiosity and gratitude overriding their preconceived notions. A new kind of legacy. By the end of the term, Jax had accomplished more than he'd ever expected. He'd proven that humans weren't just brutish survivors. They were adaptable, innovative, and capable of forging connections across even the widest cultural divides. But Jax knew his journey was far from over. The mystery of the Academy's true purpose still loomed large, and he was determined to uncover the truth. As he stood on the observation deck, gazing out at the infinite stars, Jax felt a surge of pride and determination. Humanity's story was just beginning, and he was ready to write the next chapter. The mystery surrounding the Galactic Academy's true purpose lingered in Jax Mason's mind like a shadow he couldn't shake. The classified files, Shulnok's cryptic warnings, and the growing attention on his every move all pointed to something bigger than just his presence as the Academy's first Deathworlder. And then came the breach. The hidden agenda. One night, alarms blared through the Academy, their shrill wail echoing in every corridor. Jax, jolted from a restless sleep, instinctively grabbed his multipurpose tool and darted into the hallway. Cadets and staff were scrambling toward their assigned safe zones, but Jax's gut told him to go in the opposite direction, to the archives. Navigating through chaos, Jax arrived at the restricted wing to find it swarming with security drones. They hovered in formation, but their attention was focused inward, guarding something, or someone. That's when he saw them, a small group of Veltran agents clad in stealth armor, attempting to break into the classified files. Xerix was among them, his usually smug expression replaced with grim determination. Jax hid behind a console, watching as the Veltrans worked. Whatever they were after, it was clearly worth the risk of being caught. Suddenly, a loud clang echoed as one of the agents forced open a heavily secured terminal. Data spilled onto the holographic display, streams of information too fast for Jax to follow. But one phrase stood out, bold and unmistakable. Project Vanguard, Deathworlder Initiative. Jax's breath caught in his throat. This wasn't just about him, it was about all of humanity. The confrontation. Jax couldn't stay hidden for long. One of the Veltrans spotted him and chaos erupted. Get him? Xerix barked, his voice dripping with venom. Jax's instincts kicked in. He ducked as a stun bolt sizzled past his head, then grabbed a loose panel from the console and flung it at the nearest attacker. The makeshift shield absorbed another shot as he lunged forward, closing the distance in a heartbeat. The Veltran agents were fast, but Jax was faster. He ducked, weaved, and countered, his Deathworld-honed reflexes turning the fight into a blur of movement. Within moments, 2 agents were down, leaving only Xerix standing. You should have stayed in your lane, human, Xerix hissed, his pale skin gleaming under the flickering lights. And you should have learned to stop underestimating us, Jax shot back, charging forward. The fight was brief but brutal. Xerix was skilled, but he wasn't prepared for Jax's raw determination. With a final, decisive blow, Jax sent the Veltran sprawling. The revelation. Before reinforcements arrived, Jax managed to access the terminal Xerix had unlocked. His hands flew across the interface, pulling up the data on Project Vanguard. What he found left him reeling. The Academy wasn't just a training ground for the galaxy's best and brightest. It was an experiment. Centuries ago, when humans first made contact with the Galactic Council, their Deathworld origins had terrified the more delicate species. But a few visionary leaders had seen potential in humanity's unique traits. Their adaptability, resilience, and sheer tenacity. Project Vanguard was their solution. The Academy had been designed not just to integrate humans into the galactic fold but to study them, to determine how their Deathworlder traits could be harnessed for the galaxy's benefit, or, if necessary, contained. Jax's admission hadn't been a fluke. It had been a calculated move, the culmination of decades of planning. A turning point. By the time Academy security arrived, Jax had downloaded enough data to piece together the truth. Shulnok, flanked by armed guards, confronted him as the Veltran agents were taken into custody. You know now, don't you? Shulnok said quietly, its spines drooping in what looked like regret. Yeah, Jax replied, his voice hard. You've been using us. Testing us. Shulnok sighed. It is more complicated than that, Jax Mason. The galaxy feared humanity, but Project Vanguard was meant to show them that your kind could be an ally, not a threat. You have proven that more effectively than we ever could have hoped. Jax shook his head. You didn't give us a choice. You treated us like lab rats. And yet here you stand, Shulnok said. Stronger, more capable, more respected than any Deathworlder before you. Humanity has a future in this galaxy, Jax, and you are the reason why. A new legacy. In the days that followed, the truth about Project Vanguard spread throughout the Academy. Many were outraged, but others saw it as vindication of humanity's potential. Jax became a symbol of that potential, not just for humans but for anyone who had ever been underestimated. Xerix and the Veltran agents were expelled, their actions condemned by the Council. As for Jax, he was offered a choice: continue his studies at the Academy, now as a fully informed participant, or leave and take his knowledge back to Earth. Jax chose to stay. "I'm not done here," he told Shulnak. "If humanity's going to have a place in the galaxy, we're going to earn it on our terms. No more experiments. No more secrets." Shulnak inclined its head. "Then let us make that future together." Epilogue. Years later, Jax Mason would go down in history as a pioneer, not just for humanity but for all Deathworlders. His time at the Academy became the foundation for a new era of cooperation and understanding, proving that even the most unlikely of allies could rise to meet the stars together. And though the galaxy would never forget the Deathworlder who defied the odds, Jax never sought fame. For him, it was always about something greater, carving a place for humanity among the stars, not as an experiment but as equals.